Hi there, hello again. Welcome to round 2 of your 3-day masterclass, Unlocking Your True Potential. I've got some props for you today, so that'll be fun. So yesterday, we talked about the importance of setting goals and the purpose of setting goals, which is really to grow. And then we talked about different types of goals, A-type, B-type, and C-type goals. So the C-type goal is the one that excites and delights you and scares the bejeebies out of you at the same time. You've no clue how to do it, but it's something that you really want. So did you give some serious thought overnight, during today, to what you really want in life after that session from yesterday? It's quite scary, isn't it? Because we don't tend to really allow ourselves to think about it. And it's probably quite uncomfortable as well. But still do it anyway. Really give it your full attention and work out, what is it that you want out of life? Where do you want to be in 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 3 years, 10 years? Because if it's different to where you are at now, you've got to start changing things, right? And basically, you've got nothing to lose. What have you got to lose? Nothing. You've got everything to gain by doing that. Because why shouldn't you be living your life the way you really want to live it, right? We're not put on this earth to suffer and to settle, although that's what I used to think when I, even just a few short years ago. We're really here to feel good. And just look at nature, right? So nature is for well-being. It's always recovering. And us being a part of nature, we are meant to be feeling good, right? So as I said yesterday, put on your own oxygen mask first. When you're okay, the rest of the world around you is also okay. So I always think if there's a purpose to life, then it would be to feel good. That would be the purpose every day. I always tell my clients, the biggest job you've got is to make sure that you feel good every day. Because when you feel good, you attract good and you give good. And really, although it doesn't really feel like it, some or even most of the time, we are actually in control of how we feel. And we said this yesterday, right? The only reason that you're not living your goal right now is because you haven't made a committed decision to do it yet. And you also don't know how to do it yet, which is why it's difficult for you to make that committed decision. But you can learn. Talked about riding a bike yesterday, driving a car. And we also talked about success. So we said success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So as long as you're moving towards your goal, moving towards something that you want, you are, right? And a successful person is a person who deliberately and consciously is doing what they really want to do. So ask yourself, is that what you're doing? Are you doing the things you're doing because you really want to be doing them? So today is all about overcoming obstacles. We'll dive into something we call the knowing-doing gap, which basically is the question as to why do we not do the things we know we should be doing, and which would give us way better results. Maybe like going to the gym to get fit or switching off from work over the weekend. We know that that's what we want, but instead we're hitting that snooze button instead of getting up to go to the gym, or we're checking our emails over the weekend. And it's also why we do things that we know are not going to give us the results that we want, like eating the pieces of chocolate cake or McDonald's when we actually want to start releasing some weight, or logging on in the evenings and the weekends when actually we want to be off. So all shall be revealed. Now, all great leaders in this world agreed on one thing. They disagreed on most other things, but they did agree on this one thing, which was very clear to them all, that we become what we think about. So really think about that. You become what you think about. What you think about the most is what is going to happen in your life. Self-fulfilling prophecy, sometimes we call it. So what are you thinking about most of the time? Are you thinking about why you can't do something that you want to do? Or are you thinking about how you can do it and have what you want? Which one is it? So do you generally think about what could go wrong? Or do you generally think about what could go right? Very different way of thinking, right? Now, did you know that your thoughts actually create your feelings? And that really, it's the story that we tell ourselves about a person, a situation, our environment, ourselves, that causes us to feel a certain way. And Wayne Dyer said, he passed now, but he said, if you change the way you look at a thing, the thing you look at changes. So this is all about perception. And perception is actually one of the 6 mental muscles. So if we have time at the end, I'll get into that a little bit more. Because those are the muscles that we're going to use to stay in control of our thinking. Now, as well as feelings, thoughts also create our belief systems, our conditionings and our habits. We tend to call these paradigms. And it's actually those paradigms that control our actions and our behavior. Now, those actions, so the actions that we take, cause a reaction. And this is the law of cause and effect. That basically states that every action has an equal reaction. So here's the first prop. So this is Newton's pendulum. I actually broke it, but it should still work. So you see that there? So when we pull out one of these beads, the reaction is that the one bead moves, right? So let's pull two now, and two will move. Okay. Now let's move three, and three will move. It should work with four, although it's a little bit off balance, but there we go. And four will move. So every action has an equal opposite reaction. It's nature, right? It's a natural law. Okay, so those reactions are what we call our results, our environment or our circumstances. And the good news is that we have total control over our thoughts. So let's take a closer look at this. So thoughts occur in our mind, and in our thinking into results training, we work with two parts of the mind. There's probably loads of other parts of the mind, but we work with two parts, the conscious and the subconscious mind. So let me show you a picture of the mind that we're using, which was created back in 1934 by a doctor called Thurman Fleet. And it's important to have a picture of something for us to work with, because we actually think in pictures. If I ask you to think about an apple or a hot air balloon or a cup of coffee or your car, then, or an elephant, then sort of a picture flashes in your mind, right? So our thoughts and our feelings actually create an image. So this is what we call the stick person. So Dr. Thurman Fleet, I love that name, he drew a large circle and then divided it into two parts. And the top part is the conscious mind, and the bottom part is the subconscious mind. Okay, and then he added a little circle. Okay, and he called that the body. You see it? So the body is actually an instrument of the mind. So it's this is the picture that we'll use of the mind, and we call it the stick person, or also known as the secret genie. Okay, so the thing is that the conscious mind impresses thoughts and ideas on the subconscious mind, which are then expressed through the body. The body then takes action. The action gets a reaction, and that reaction we call our results. Okay, now, the conscious mind is our thinking mind. And it's our reasoning mind. This is where ideas and thoughts occur and where our logic lives, basically. It's our individual mind. It's what individualizes us. And the conscious mind has the ability to accept or to reject an idea. Your choice, we choose. So as an example, so think about your goal, something that you want, and then a thought comes up about why you can't. Now, you can reject that idea, right? That's up to you. You have a choice. You can reject the idea of why you can't. Now, the thing is that once you have accepted an idea or a thought, what we call the law of polarity comes into place. So the law of polarity states that everything has an equal opposite. So there basically isn't a hot without a cold. There can't be an up if there isn't a down. There is no in without an out. There's no left without a right. There's no bad without good, and vice versa. And there's no negative without a positive. And there's no positive without a negative. Okay, so everything has an equal opposite. So once you've accepted an idea, you can then choose to label it positive or negative. So you can choose to look at the positive aspect of it or at the negative aspect, because everything just is. We attach a story to it and we make it a positive or a negative story. So what tends to happen very often is that we come up with a great idea. Maybe it's your goal, something that you really want, and almost immediately the negative thought comes into play. It comes into our mind about why it isn't possible or why we can't do it. So now that you know that that is just part of the law of polarity, it just happens. It doesn't mean that it's not meant to be. It doesn't mean that you actually can't do it. It's just part of the two sides of each. So the two sides of the spectrum actually playing out. So both of them are going to come up. Positive and negative is going to come up. So now you choose, right? Your conscious mind can choose. What are you going to focus on? You decide. Decide that you're going to reject the negative thought and you focus on the positive thought. You've got to train your mind to do that, right? Because we are really taught from a very young age to focus on the negative stuff, to focus on why we can't. When you got your report card when you were little and you maybe had 5 really good grades and 1 that wasn't so good, the focus is on the one that's not so good. Okay, so from very early age, we're taught to focus on negative rather than on positive. But it is a decision, and you can absolutely reject any negative idea about anything. So then once you've accepted an idea and you get emotionally involved with this, so this is attaching the positive or negative story to it, it is then impressed upon your subconscious mind. Remember, that's your subconscious mind. Okay. Now, the subconscious mind operates very differently to the conscious mind. So the subconscious mind has to accept everything that is given to it. It has no sense of humor. It has no judgment. It will accept everything that you impress upon it, whether it's good or bad. It really doesn't care. Okay. Do a little exercise. So let's just close, if you can, close your eyes. Not if you're driving, obviously. If it's safe, close your eyes. Now, imagine that you're going on holiday and you are stepping off a plane in a hot country and you feel the heat hitting your body. Then you walk into the terminal, which has air conditioning, and then your skin starts to feel the cool air. Now you're going through passport control, you collect your new suitcase, the one with the butterflies on it. In fact, you nearly missed it because you were still looking for your old tatty black one. You get into the car that's driving you to your hotel. The hotel is beautiful, 5-star plus luxury. You check in, you have a laugh with the receptionist. You get to your room, which really smells lovely of fresh lemons. You get your swimsuit on, you step into your flip-flops, you pick up your towel, and then you walk down the stairs. So as you're walking out of the hotel, you go past the restaurant and the swimming pool. You can smell the chlorine of the swimming pool. You go down the steps to the beach, and as you're walking onto the sand, you can feel the hot sand spraying over your feet and your flip-flops. There's your deck chair. And the cushions on the deck chair are super, super, super comfortable. So you sit down, you rub some coconut sun cream, and you relax. Now, there's the waiter, and you order a cocktail, and then you lie back and relax. You can feel the sun on your skin. You can hear the waves crashing, and you can hear some kids playing volleyball in the distance. And when you look out, you can see clear blue sky and a turquoise ocean. Oh, there's the waiter with your drink. It's lovely and cool. And you take a deep breath and a long sip. Delicious. Now open your eyes. Were you on the beach? Were you on holiday? Did you smell the lemon in your room? Did you smell the coconut? Did you feel the sand on your feet? Did you feel the sun on your skin? Did you hear the kids playing volleyball? I bet you did, if you properly imagined it. So that's what I meant. Your subconscious mind believes everything you tell it, right? So you imagined it. It wasn't real. You know, when you've opened your eyes, you're sitting wherever you're sitting. You're not on the beach. Or maybe some of you are, but most of you probably are not. So you imagined it in your mind, right? Now, imagination actually is another one of our 6 mental muscles, and we use it all the time, but we mostly use it to imagine things that we don't want, right? So we worry about things. Now, the thing is that everything is created twice. It is first created in your mind or in somebody's mind, and it is first a thought or first an idea. And then it is created in the real world. So think about the top that you're wearing. Someone first thought of that. Think of the chair that you're sitting on. Someone first thought of that. Think of your iPhone. Think of watching this. You know, I'm using a program called Restream. So someone first thought of that and then created it. Many of us use Zoom or Teams or Google Meet for our meetings at work. Someone first thought of that. Okay? So the thing is that everything that you can perceive and you can experience in your tangible world was first a thought. Okay? Now remember that we become what we think about. Okay? And then bear in mind that your body is an expression of what's going on in your subconscious mind, and it behaves and takes actions according to what your subconscious mind believes to be true. And your subconscious mind believes everything that you tell it to be true, right? So be careful what you tell it. Now you can realize that this ultimately then creates the results in your life, because it's your actions and your behavior that creates your results in life. So you've got to become pretty picky about what thoughts you are allowing to take hold, right? So let's have a look at this and let me explain like this. So this is a pot with a bit of soil in it. Now imagine that the soil is your subconscious mind. And I've got some, what's it called, seeds here that are nice. They're actually, what are they called? In fact, they're from Holland. They're wildflower seeds. Okay, so if I put those seeds, see them, put the seeds in here, right? And now if I were to nurture those seeds, water them, give them attention, maybe talk to them, in a little while, actually they would turn into wildflowers, right? Now, if I had planted a poisonous seed in there, for the seed for a poisonous plant, and I nurtured it and I watered it and I gave it attention and I talked to it, then the soil would also grow it. So imagine that your thoughts are the seeds and your subconscious mind is the soil. The soil doesn't care whether you plant poison or whether you plant a beautiful flower. It will grow it if you cultivate it and give it attention, right? So this is what happens with our subconscious mind. If we choose to focus on negative thoughts, it will start to create negative beliefs. If we decide to focus on positive things, then it will start to create positive beliefs. Okay, so really, really important to reject those thoughts that don't serve you. Now, go back and think about your goal, about what you want. And ask yourself, what are you telling yourself about this? Seriously, what are you saying about this? Are you saying yes to it or are you saying no to it? And now start to think, well, if you're thinking about why you can't do it, why it's difficult, why it will never happen, I don't know how to do it, it's not going to work, this is not what we do, no one's ever done it before. Okay, so ask yourself how you can now start to think differently about this. So what empowering thoughts can you start to nurture about it? Feels different, right? Very, very different feeling. And the thing is that once we tell ourselves a different story, once we start to think about possibilities, we're going to take very, very different action than if we think about limitations, right? It's a very different, you'll take a very different to if you believe that you can't do something. In fact, if you can't believe you can't do something, it's very likely that you don't take any action at all. Right, so let's talk a little bit more about paradigms. So paradigms are a multitude of habits, your belief system, your conditioning, maybe call it your blueprint. So we're conditioned, or you could call it we're programmed from birth, really. When we are babies, our subconscious mind is wide open and we take in everything from our environment and we take it as to be true, right? Because your subconscious mind accepts everything. So by the time we're 2 or 3 years old, a lot of our programming is already set. By the time we're 7 years old, we're really sort of done for. So did you know that we reckon about 96 to 98% of what you do is habitual, right? We're on autopilot really nearly all of our days. So remember yesterday we talked about the car example, and where you can drive from A to B and you arrive without even remembering how you got there. Now think back to yesterday or earlier today. How much of it did you consciously experience, right? What did you do consciously? And how much of the things that you did you do out of habit? Most things we do all day, we do it out of habit and we don't even question it. We don't even think about it. It's an interesting thought, right? Now, some of you may have already done this exercise, but it's a good one. So I'm going to ask you, when you put on your shoes, which foot is first? Did you have to think about it? Probably. Now, why do you think you put either your left or your right foot in first? So some people say, well, because I'm left or right-handed. But it's actually most likely that you put your left or your right foot in because the person that got you dressed when you were little told you which foot to stick out. So if you are now putting your shoe on, your right shoe first, when you were little and the person was getting you dressed and you stuck out your left foot, what they probably did is they probably tapped your leg and said, no, other foot. And then you stuck out your right foot. Right? And if we have kids, we do that with our own children, right? Now, the reason that they told us to do that is because that was their habit, their conditioning. That's the way they did it. And so we're taught a lot of things that we don't even question, we don't even think about. And a lot of the stuff is not necessary or not true. Right? Now, you probably, it's a silly example, but you probably never gave it any thought. You never probably consciously thought, well, should I put my left foot or my right foot in? But it illustrates that you are conditioned, right? And that you've been doing this forever, never given it any thought, just because that's how you were taught to do it. That's how you've always done it. I was actually talking to a client of mine the other day who has little children, was given in this example. And he said, I've become very, very conscious now of which feet I'm asking my children to put the shoes on first. Okay, so it's actually the same with everything, right? We are conditioned and we don't even know it and we don't even question it. So if we're conditioned that we believe something is possible, great. But if we believe that some condition and we believe something isn't possible, then really all we need to do is change that conditioning, right? So our life is basically dictated by our conditioning, by our programming, and we live out the blueprints that we have. Okay, so everything we believe or don't believe possible is fixed through our paradigms. So let's start to question some of those beliefs, right? So if you want something, but you think you can't do it or have it, then ask yourself, what am I believing about this? Why do I think I can't have this? And is it actually true? And you'll find that when you start reevaluating your beliefs, most of them are really not true. So then you can start to cultivate a different belief, one that is going to get you to your goal. So think of your goal again now. And realize that your conditioning and your blueprint dictates how you think about it. And your paradigm is dictating your logic. So the way you're conditioned is even dictating the thoughts and the ideas that you allow to think. Right? And it totally limits you. And really, that's another reason to have a coach or a mentor, because we remind you of that constantly. And we push you to think beyond it, even though it may be uncomfortable at first. And it will be very uncomfortable at first. But the thing is that it's through where we are uncomfortable, that's really where the magic happens, right? Because we know that in the past, when we've pushed through something, that's where we grow, that's where we achieve what we want to achieve. You know, I give gym examples, but if you go to the gym and you start to get fit, if you push, it's at that point where you push yourself just that bit further, where your personal trainer might say, come on, you can do another 5 sit-ups, or come on, you can do another 3 press-ups, or come on, you can run a little longer, for another couple of minutes, that you do it. And that's where we grow, and that's where we get stronger, and that's where we get to our goal. It's the same for everything, same for the goal that you want to achieve. And remember, yesterday we said, the only difference between you and someone, for instance, working less hours or earning a different amount of money, is just the way that you're conditioned. It's the way that you think. So really, all we need to do is upgrade your conditioning and upgrade your blueprint so it aligns with your goal. And we need to do that not just through guiding our thoughts, but also by changing some habits. And that's a big thing, is to change some habits. So here's another exercise. And those who follow me will know it, but still do it anyway, because it is always a very good reminder, right? So I want you to cross your arms like that. Cross your arms. Okay. And now shake them out and cross them in the opposite way to how you would normally do it. Okay. Now shake them out again and cross them in the opposite way of how you would normally do it again. And then one last time, shake it out and cross them the opposite way to how you would normally do it. Weird, right? Because I bet the first time you did it, it was quite difficult. You probably were fiddling around a lot to work out how actually is the opposite way around. So it's a really good exercise, and it tells us a very interesting story. So basically, we have an habitual way of doing this, like we have habitual ways of doing lots of other things. So you first had to think about how you do it now. So you had to become aware of how you do it now. And then you had to very consciously work out how to do it the opposite way. And it took a few efforts, right? It took thought, it took effort, and it took a few goes. So when you first try to do it the opposite way, it's quite hard. And maybe it was a little bit easier the second time, and maybe, a little bit easier the third time, but it still would take a lot of thought for you to do that. So if I asked you to do this again tomorrow, you'd probably have to start that process all over again. You'd have to first become aware how you're doing it now, and then you've got to work out how to do it the opposite way. And it would take a while for it to become easier, and it would take a longer while even for it to become a new habit. So if I said to you, I want you to change the habit of crossing your arms this way to habitually crossing them the other way, that's going to take some work, right? Some effort. But the thing is, you can learn to do that. Okay. And again, a silly example with the arms, but it just illustrates that any habit we have, we only have it because we've done something over and over and over again. So we've sort of taught ourselves these habits through constant and spaced repetition. So to change a habit, you just got to do something else repetitively until that becomes a habit. So it's the same with every habit that we have. So when we talk about the knowing-doing gap, we have to implement a new habit, right? And we really have to implement new habits one at a time. If you try to change more than one or two, nothing will happen. And we all know this, right? We tried to change 10 things at the same time, and in the end, nothing actually changed. And the other thing is that you have to replace a negative, a non-productive habit with a positive one. Consciously replace it with a positive one, because otherwise it automatically will replace itself with another negative one. So, maybe an example of that would be someone who stops smoking, but then starts to eat a load of sweets. And that's also not what we want to be doing. So remember when we said that you only to think of what you want, right? And the how is going to reveal itself later. Well, the thing is that you don't know how to achieve it yet, but if we apply the same principles that we did here, so we're going to open our minds, start to think about things a bit differently, and start to implement some new habits, then you're going to learn how to do it. You're going to find out how to do it. And then before you know it, you have created a new habit. And because a habit is an action, and it will create a different action, so your different action is going to create a different result. Hey presto, there you go. Your life has changed. So let's summarize. So your conscious mind can accept and reject, and it labels something positive or negative, and you choose that. Your subconscious mind has to accept everything your conscious mind gives to it. And in your subconscious mind live your paradigms, and those are a multitude of your habits, your belief systems, your conditioning, your blueprint, what you want to call it. And you mostly operate from this blueprint because 96 to 98% of what we do is habitual. And your body is an expression of your mind, and your actions and your behavior create a reaction, and we call that our results. So when you're thinking the same things, you're going to get the same results. When you start to think different thoughts, you're going to get a different result. So I've got another little prop here for you. So really, we've been taught, again, from being very little, because that's the way life is, to live through our five senses. So we're taught to look at our environment, we perceive it through our five senses, see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. And then we sort of allow that to control what we're thinking. So the old way, I don't know if you can see it here. So we start our thought pattern with results, and we allow the results to dictate our thoughts. Remember, the thoughts create a feeling, and the feeling creates conditioning, and that creates an action. And that action, if you don't change anything, if you go off if you allow your thoughts to be controlled by your current results, your actions are going to be the same. You're going to get the same results. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to look at our environment, but then we want to say, I don't like this. This is not how I want it. And then we want to start with our thoughts. I don't know if you can see this properly. So you want to start with your thoughts, which create a feeling and conditioning, which then create action, a different action, because you're choosing different thoughts. You're going to get a different result. How good's that? So the thing is that everything is always changing. So there's the law of vibration. We'll talk a bit more about that tomorrow when we talk about law of attraction. So the law of vibration dictates that nothing rests and everything is always in motion. Now, when you look through anything through a microscope, you can see all the little molecules moving around, right? We look at our body, it looks solid, but it's not, because it's all just things moving. So basically everything moves at different speeds, but everything is moving. And so it means that everything is changing all the time. The thing is that by allowing our current results to dictate our thoughts, we're going to just change everything into the same thing again. So what we do in our thinking and results program is we look at our results, we decide whether we like them or not. If we don't like them, we take control of our thoughts about it. We start to consciously think something very different. We choose our thoughts, create different feelings, different actions, different results. Here you go. So really what that means is that the now, so the current moment that you're in, is just a reflection of how you've used your mind up to now. It's a reflection of all the thoughts, all the decisions, all the feelings, all the conditioning, and all the actions that you've entertained up to now. And the great thing is that you can change it anytime, right? Because the past has no influence at all on what is possible in your future. Just because something didn't work out in the past doesn't mean it's not going to work out in the future. Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean that you can't do it. But you have to decide. You have to decide to change something. It's really simple, isn't it? But it's actually really much easier said than done, like many things. So really, anybody who's good at something has a coach, right? So we look at a tennis player or a football player or a swimmer or a basketball player. Or if you want to learn how to play the violin or the piano or the cello or the trumpet, or learn a different language, you take lessons, right? Because the coach or the mentor or the instructor knows how to best do the thing that you want to learn, okay? And they would guide you and they would course correct you along the way. So, a tennis coach, so if I went on to learn to play tennis and I start off, the tennis coach may say to me, well, if you hold your racket just slightly this way, or if you put your body into the shot this way, you'll get a way better result. And that's exactly what we do. And you do get better, right? So get better at life and make some of those permanent upgrades, because why wouldn't you, right? And to do it, you probably will need someone to help you, especially because your paradigms are going to be very strong and they're going to keep holding you back. And all of these reasons that you come up with, they really are not true, but you need someone to help you question them, right? So remember, you become what you think about. And your world, your outside world, is basically a reflection of your thoughts and your inner world, because whatever's going on inside of you is reflected in your world outside of you. Okay, so we talked about the plant pot. So one to give you is, so for those of you who constantly feel short on time, that a big part of that is because of the habits that you got yourself into, right? So you've got yourself into a habit of working a lot of hours. You got yourself into a habit of checking emails. You've got yourself into a habit of working at the weekends. You've got yourself into a habit of accommodating everybody else, right? Now, remember that it's your life and it's your time. You were given 24 hours to use for your life, not for someone else to use, just like someone else has 24 hours to use how they want to use it, not for you to dictate. So really give that thought and ask yourself, where are you leaking time? I was talking about this in the lesson yesterday. Where are you leaking time? So a lot of us feel that we're short on time, but part of it is because we're running from one thing to the other. We don't give anything sort of real focused attention in a fixed time frame. And we get distracted and we allow ourselves to get distracted. So, maybe you're talking to your neighbor for 20 minutes about nothing, but that's 20 minutes of your day gone. 20 minutes in which you could have taken some productive action towards your goal, which would have then freed up your time later on in the day. Really important. So what I want you to do is to block one of your weekend days and do not check your emails or do any work. So if you have to hide your phone or your laptop or lock it away or give it to your neighbor, then do that. So do not check emails, do not write any emails, do not do anything to do with work for one day at the weekend, not even on a Sunday night, right? And think about one thing where you tend to get distracted in, which is leaking your time. And then I would love to hear how you get on with that, because this is a habit that you're changing. So to change a habit, you've got to want it, and you've got to be consistent, and you've got to persist. right? And the first thing is you need to become aware of it, and then you have to remember it, right? So interesting exercise. Would love to hear how you get on. So homework for everybody. So to start opening up your mind, let's do a couple of things differently. And just try it for a week and see what happens, right? Or try it for longer if you want to, but try it for a week. Give it a bit of time and see what happens. So start to brush your teeth with your opposite hand, right? And then take a different route when you're going to somewhere. So if there's somewhere that you're going more or less on a daily basis to the same place and you take the same route, slightly change the route. So maybe it's, driving to work or walking to the bus stop or maybe going to the shop or really anywhere else that you go on a daily basis. So if you would, turn left and then turn right, turn left and turn left, or turn a different right, or, take just a slightly different route. Because when our environment changes, what happens is that our senses, our 5 senses, are stimulated in a different way. And when that happens, our thoughts start to change a little bit. It really works. And you're going to come up with some different ideas. And do it bearing in mind and thinking about what it is that you want. Think about your goal and allow the different ideas that are going to come up about your goal and how you can achieve it. Entertain them, allow them to come in, and allow yourself to give them some thought. Okay, let's see if there's any questions. Okay, so there's one here. Look. Okay, yeah. So why is it so difficult to change a habit? Well, it's because it's new. It's because you haven't thought of it, and it's because it's really quite fixed. So to change a habit, you have to really want to make a change, right? Because that's going to give you the persistence to do it. And it's just training yourself and making the effort to do it. And like I said, just change one habit at a time, because if you try to do too much, it just won't happen, because you can't think of all these things at the same time. Okay. And a lot of the time you're not aware that you have a habit that doesn't serve you. So become aware of the things that you're doing that are not conducive to you achieving your goal, and then change one little one at a time. Okay. And the other thing, it was actually, I don't know if you heard of the guy called Joe Dispenza. He's great. I watch him on YouTube a lot. So he explained, and this was something that really resonated with me a few years ago. He said, the thing is that when we think something, our thought creates a chemical reaction in our body, and it's that chemical reaction that we call a feeling. Okay, so our body sort of gets addicted to the chemical reaction. And so here's an example. So if you drive to work every day, and at 8:30 in the morning, you're stuck in traffic, you're really not happy about it, you're pissed off about it, and every morning at 8:30, you start getting frustrated, maybe a little bit angry, you're feeling like, frustrated. Now, then you get to work and you sort of forget about it, but the next morning, 8:30, you're stuck in traffic again, same feelings. Okay? Now, this goes on. Now it's Saturday morning, and you're in bed. Maybe you're having breakfast in bed, you're totally chilled out, you're having a great time, you're doing whatever you're doing, but you're relaxed and you're feeling good. About 10 to 9, your body is going to go, oi, I should be feeling pissed off now and frustrated and angry. And then it's going to make you think of things that are going to cause that feeling, because your body is craving that chemical. So all of a sudden, you start thinking about how your partner upset you the other day. Or you start to think about how work didn't go well, or you start to think about all the stuff that you have to do that you haven't got time for. And before you know it, you've started to feel angry and frustrated again. But it's because your body is craving that chemical, and it's causing you to think thoughts. So we've got to be in control of our thoughts. I'll talk about the 6 mental muscles in a minute. So we've got to stay in control of our thoughts. We've got to make an effort and put the energy and the time in to change some of the habits, but it becomes a little bit more difficult, because your body, if your sort of normal state is a negative feeling state, then you need to sort of wean your body off those chemicals and start your body getting used to the happy chemicals. And actually you can do that very, very quickly, right? Because what tends to happen, and see this, I've experienced this myself and see this with all my clients, all of a sudden you realize that your sort of go-to thought pattern is to look at the positive side of things. Your go-to question is, how can I do it, rather than how can't I do it? But it takes some training, and it takes some effort and some time to do that. Anyway, so I hope that answered the question. And then you have someone asking, how do you control your thoughts? So, well, we control our thoughts by using our 6 mental muscles. We have a whole lesson on this in the training, but I'll just touch on them briefly. So one of them, a few of them I already mentioned. So one of them, imagination. So we use our imagination all the time, but most of the time we imagine things that we don't want. So we have to start to learn to control that and focus our imagination on the things that we do want. And everything is created twice. Self-fulfilling prophecy. What you think of the majority of the time is what you're going to see in your outside world. That's what's going to be your result. So another one is reason. So this is our ability to think, our ability to reason, our ability to apply logic. This is where the thoughts come in. This is where we decide whether we accept or reject a thought. That's through our reasoning factor. Then we have perception, mentioned that before. So perception gives us the opportunity to literally look at something from a different point of view. So I ask people, get my book, if I point at that, is that left or right? So for you, it's probably left. Now if I ask you, is that left or right? So for you, that's probably right. But for me, it's the opposite way around, right? So I'm right and you're right. It is just literally the way that you are looking at it, from which point you are viewing it. Okay. So that means really that you never have to fall out with anybody again, but because everybody is thinking from their paradigms, from their frame of reference, from how they've been conditioned, from their belief systems, and you're right and they're right, right? So what you want to do is, when you come up against an obstacle or a problem, or you don't know how to do something, how can you change your perception about it? How can you change your way of thinking about it? Then we've got the will. The will is another one of the 6 mental faculties. This is where the will gives us the opportunity to focus on one thing to the exclusion of all other things. Okay, so it allows us to not be distracted when it's well developed. And one of the ways to train your will is to focus, for instance, on it. Go somewhere quiet where you don't get disturbed, and for 5 minutes a day, focus on the light of a candle, or focus on one dot on the wall. Because you can train your mind to just keep focusing in. And every time your mind wanders, bring it back. Every time it wanders, bring it back. Just keep doing it, bring it back. It's a bit like training a dog. Bring it back, bring it back. Because if you can focus on one thing, you can focus on anything, right? So it means then that you'll be able to focus on the positive aspects, for instance, of your goal. It's going to make that easier. Okay. Then we've got memory. So memory is where we store information, and we tend to, it's like a filing system. So something that happened 6 years ago, if a similar situation happens today, we will go back into that filing system and we remember how it was at the time, and we will allow ourselves to be controlled by that. That's not how we want to use our memory. We want to use our memory to think about how we can do things, to think about solutions that we've come up with before, and use that instead. And then the last one's intuition. So Bob quotes this. When we are praying, we're talking to God, but when we listen to our intuition, that's God talking to us, right? So that's basically your intuition. When you get that niggling thought of go and do this, or turn left today instead of right, or maybe you walked out the door and you go and a thought pops up, so I should take my umbrella, and maybe the sun's shining, but something says, go and get my umbrella. Now what we do is we then go, there's a sun shining, I don't need my umbrella. But actually what then happens is that 3 hours later, when we're, on a fun fair somewhere, and it starts raining, now you wish that you had your umbrella. So it's these little sort of ideas and inspirations that come up. Your intuition is very quiet, so you've got to be calm and quiet for you to actually hear it and listen to it. Absolutely listen to it. Anyway, got a little bit over time, but I hope that was helpful and interesting. I love all this stuff. It's so great. And, I really, really enjoyed this session, but there's so much to share, and we've really hardly scratched the surface on any of this stuff, right? So what I want you to do is to keep thinking about your goal, and then guide your thoughts consciously to the positive side of the spectrum, right? And just remember that everything just is. Any person, any situation, we ourselves, everything just is. We make it a good or a bad thing by choosing the way that we think about it. So let's choose to start focusing on positive thought patterns. So if you have any questions, reach out anytime. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I'm going to talk about frequencies, the law of attraction, and a few other universal laws. Basically explain how to manifest what you really want. So have fun with it all, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Bye.